Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Mary Grace Show. I am Mary Grace, the voice of sanity, to help you navigate politics, culture, wellness, faith, and world events. I am here today with one of our frequent guests on the show. This is Dr. Troy Spurrill, and he is a founder and principal at Synapse Center for Health and Healing. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Troy. It's great to have you. You look very tropical and Irish
Yeah,
at the same time today.
yeah, it is that day, so my Irish heritage is coming out a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same. Yeah.
yeah.
You know, I used to think I had green eyes, but they're actually blue, so I couldn't get away with that any longer. I guess maybe they're sort of green.
Mine are actually green.
Okay, yeah. So depending on the light, maybe, but
Right, exactly.
I
Yeah.
gotta, I gotta do this. So, as people are coming in, please let us know in the live or on the replay where you're watching from. Also, we will be taking questions at the end of this show, and just a reminder that the Mary Grace Show is for education and entertainment purposes. We are here to help you, guide you, give you some information and hopefully provide some direction for you. We are not here to diagnose, advise, to treat in any way. And if you would like to connect with Dr. Troy on a professional basis, we will provide the opportunity for you to reach out to him and do that. So let's get right into the content today. I wanted to ask you, uh, after now that we've had, I guess, the first 50 or so days of a new administration, going on 2 months with President Trump, and we finally got RFK Jr. confirmed. What types of changes are you seeing in the wellness space, in the health atmosphere? Uh, are you noticing some differences in one direction or the other?
Actually, yeah, and it's not going to be what you think it is. It's actually I'm noticing a heck of a lot more anxiety from my Canadian patients and my liberal patients,
Oh,
and so that's what I've noticed so far. A lot.
from the liberal and the what other?
My Canadian page. I had multiple people from Canada today, and so they all brought up President Trump. They are, and I do my best to educate them in the process. They're here for healthcare, so
Yeah.
I just share some things from a different perspective, and it's generally well received. But my I love my Canadians. They're generally good conflict avoiders, though, so they're very things are not going well up in Canada. I'm just going to say that right now for a lot of things. So there's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride. But a lot of the other stuff is happening and is a good sign. And I
Mhm.
would say, though, it's too early to see any of the fruit of that.
Mhm.
But all the seeds are being planted, all the right things are being done, even the stuff that's being challenged, and the things that President Trump's not allowed to do based on what judges have said. That's all being assessed. Going to the Supreme Court, that's all working. In the
Mhm.
healthcare field, we're not getting as much resistance.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
RFK has not come out publicly with a lot of his changes. He's made some great announcements. They have made
Mhm.
some cuts. There's going to be even more really good announcements that are going to be coming in the future as the economy and some of the other stuff gets worked on
Mhm.
first. So I would actually tell people just to hang in there. It's going to be, this is
Mhm.
just a guess, 6 to 8 months down the road, we're going to start seeing some of the fruits of
Okay.
change in the healthcare part of it. And then within 2 years, we're going to have a new healthcare system.
It's amazing, it's amazing. Now, do you think part of that do you think that, like, the insurance system will be part of that? Because right now, I mean, it's
No,
crazy.
they can't. You know why? Because it would actually bankrupt. Let me say it this way: we're so unhealthy that there's no way insurance could afford to pay for what everyone needs. So the only way that'll happen is if the government does subsidize it in some way, shape, or form
Mhm.
because we're doing well financially. If we're trillions of dollars in debt, we can't do
Mhm.
that. if our debt gets paid up off,
Wow.
if we balance the budget, then watch what happens with how our healthcare system can get subsidized, not for the traditional system, but for the proactive
Mhm. Mhm.
preventative care system, true healthcare.
Right,
And
right,
insurance
right.
companies will never be,
Mhm.
they're not going to get that because President Trump is creating an environment where people will have choice. So
Yeah.
they'll be able to choose who they want to see. So you're going to see it through
Mhm.
HSAs. You're going to see it through tax savings at the end of the year. So you're going to have it's going to be implemented that way. Is my take on how I'm seeing things kind of lay out. When we were with General Flynn, he spoke specifically about making changes at uh,
At
the
the local level?
local
Or
level. Yeah, thank
okay.
you. And that's what we're
Yeah.
seeing. So we're basically looking to empower local communities, healthcare centers, even the food. It has to start with changing our Food and Drug
Yeah.
Administration. We need good, healthy food being made in America and served from farm to table, not being imported and then sprayed. And so that's what tends to happen. The more everything you're seeing with
Mhm.
what they're doing internationally, and I know he's getting a lot of blowback with the tariffs and stuff like that, but what he's doing is so
Mhm.
brilliant because it's actually empowering us and other countries actually to learn to take care of themselves again.
Right.
And because
Right.
the countries got too politicized, and
Mhm.
look at the consequences. When we get food that is not from this country, it gets sprayed because of the transport. It loses its nutrients because of the transport,
Mhm.
and they've been okay with that. They've been okay with, "Here's an apple. I know that it doesn't have the nutrients in it anymore, but it still looks like an apple." Well, guess what? Our
Mhm.
food is meant to actually fuel us, and
Right.
when it doesn't do that, and it's full of toxins, it does the exact
Mhm.
opposite, which is why we're in the state we're in. All of that's being
Yeah.
switched over and changed, so we need a healthy economy first
Mhm.
before we even tackle
Right.
the insurance
Right.
and all that stuff.
Right. Right. Well, the thing about insurance too that I think people have maybe lost sight of is that the most, I would say most of the healthcare decisions, the medical decisions in this country are driven by insurance companies.
Yeah,
And for example, the emphasis on early screening, mammograms,
yeah,
for example, people do it because the insurance pays for it. Or here's another one. Um, if the doctor recommends a medication like a statin, which nobody has a shortage of statin in their body, but because of some arbitrary numbers on cholesterol, the doctor says, "You need this drug."
yeah,
And then the patient says, "Oh, is it covered by insurance?" That's like the first question.
yeah,
And
always,
then, "Oh, my I don't have to pay. I get this for free. No
yeah,
copay," right? And so, you know, when it comes to making a choice between self-directed care with a group like Synapse
yeah,
or doing what the allopathic mainstream doctor says, the choice, it's like, well, what the doctor is telling me is covered by insurance. What Dr. Troy or Dr. Tracy or anybody is telling me is not. It's out of my pocket. And so, it becomes a financial decision,
yeah,
but it's like a false it's a false reality
it is.
because people have been lulled and brainwashed into this system of just blindly accepting what the insurance company says you can and can't do and what they will and won't pay
Yeah,
for. And they're paying for sick care.
yeah, they're paying for disease management,
Yeah.
and we know it doesn't work because we've gotten to a point where we're the sickest we've ever been, and,
Yeah.
MAHA, or Make America Healthy Again, is on point with changing our Food and Drug Administration, going
Mhm.
in there right away. That's what we need to do, and so, a
Yeah.
lot of, like insurance in general, they will never pay for proactive care because, it's hard to measure. Because 'cause I've had patients that have come in and they're in a wheelchair. I had one in particular, was in a wheelchair. She said, "I, went to Mayo." She's all upset with Mayo Clinic because they said, "It looks like you're going to get MS, but you don't have it yet. Come back when you have MS." And she was upset. And I said, "No, they actually did you a service because your insurance wouldn't have covered their treatments. You would have had a $40,000 bill. So the reason they're saying that is because they'll only treat it when you have a diagnosis that's defendable,
Yeah.
meaning there's actual damage to the body. So the problem is we can actually prevent that." So I was able to find some stuff with her, get her out of the wheelchair. She now runs marathons. She didn't need to go to Mayo Clinic. So we prevented an MS, but that's hard to measure. When you start eating healthy, how can you how can you say I prevented
Mhm.
heart disease? I prevented,
Mhm.
except some of the long range study stuff. So it
Yeah.
doesn't get a lot of attention that way. But the reality is, we see
Mhm.
in other countries, in particular, when they have cleaner food and they're more active with their lifestyle, they live longer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and one of the challenges that we've had with, uh, caring for my dad, he's 87, he had a stroke last fall, and the challenge has been not necessarily with getting him back on his feet, literally,
Yeah,
or physically. It's been battling the system that views him as too old to fix.
yeah,
And, I mean, you see this subtle and not so subtle attitude towards somebody like him, and it's very interesting, like, people look at you like you're crazy when you talk about getting him like, his quality of life
yeah,
and keeping him active, and, of course, we were doing that from the very first day he went to the hospital. I mean, we were showing him videos of the day before. This is you walking down the street. And it was just, you could kind of tell, especially when we told the hospital that we were opting for an acute rehab center that was not in the same system as the hospital. That was like that was really bad because they knew they weren't going to have the option of sending him to their um you know I'm trying to not say
not get in trouble.
to that place that they knew that he would go and just languish.
Yes, yeah,
When we
yep,
were talking about acute rehab, which is
yeah,
we're getting him back on his feet. And then, I can't tell you how many times they pushed us off when we asked to get him outside, to get
yeah,
fresh air, to get him in a wheelchair. I mean, I was told by one nurse, I'll lose my job. I could lose my job if I take him off the ward and God forbid, take him outside,
yeah,
even though it's on hospital grounds. And, there was a time not long ago when this very hospital where he was built with porches, was built with
yeah,
dedicated gardens for getting outside, getting the patients outside. And if you doubt me, there's pictures of it. And all the boomers here remember that, and the Gen X, like, that that's the way they treated patients. They put them literally outside in the sun.
yeah. I think we're gonna see a return to some of these foundational things.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I mentioned before that, I've been asked to walk around with, a local trauma
Yeah, yeah,
consultant,
yeah, yeah. How's
and
that
that
going?
this it's going great. The team is great. They're actually very receptive to the functional medicine. But this, I was in the room with the surgeon, and he
Mhm.
said, "We need to get you walking. In fact, if you can get outside, that would be great." And you're the first person I thought of when he said that. I'm like, "Mary, I would love you as a
Oh.
doctor," but this is the surgeon who actually asked me to come to the hospital. So he gets it. Like he gets it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's
things
so
are
good.
changing in
Oh
that world
gosh,
too.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and, it's so funny because at our where we live, our house has a beautiful southern exposure, and on the back deck
yeah,
and in the backyard, and we go outside like, the very first thing my dad does every morning is get up, after he gets dressed, he walks to the kitchen, walks to the back door, walks out on the back porch, just checks out his domain, right? And then after breakfast, almost always, I say, "Hey, do you wanna go outside for a little bit? You wanna sit on the porch?" and he sits out on the deck and suns himself.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's
Oh, good.
40 degrees, he's
Yep.
out there,
Good.
and I've put him out there with blankets on, you know?
Yep.
And that's just what we do. I mean, he was out there today for an hour,
Yeah.
and there was a cold north wind, but it blocks, the wind is blocked. You can't I mean, you're baking out there, you know?
So they
S
just did a study. They just released a study, and
Yeah.
in this study, it measured people with sun exposure to people
Mhm.
with limited sun exposure who use sunscreen.
Yeah.
And the people with sun exposure outlived the other group by quite a bit, by over 12 years. And
Dang.
so, and not only that, there wasn't a direct comment on quality of life, but there's a parable there where it was actually where quality of life was insinuated as far as improvements as well. So we do know that just sunlight
Yeah.
is very, very helpful. And so again, we have a general statement: if God made it, it's good; if man changed it, beware.
Mhm.
And sun fuels your body.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
I'm against sunburns as much as possible, but even that's not the end of the world. There's so much you can do to restore the healing, and that we need the sun. So
Mhm.
it's very, very important to get it versus get no sun exposure at all.
Well, and the way we do it, obviously, is we're it's March, and we're already building that
Yeah,
base for when we go outside,
yeah,
And it's so funny because we grew up in the age of, like, copper tone, right? Which was
yes,
0 SPF.
yeah,
And so when I take my dad to the lake, I usually use something like Maui Babe, which is literally just oil, right?
yeah,
And I'm like, "Here's your suntan lotion." And, and so but, because it smells good and it
yeah,
feels good, but we're not really, like, we're not doing all that
yeah, right.
that crazy aerosol stuff. But, we don't usually jump to questions so quickly, but now since we're talking about sun, I do have a question from a YouTube listener, who has become a frequent listener on our, Ask the Doctor segments. This is, Cuddier. They said, "Doctor, we go on a lot of walks. We're in our 40s. Should we rarely" she said, "We rarely wear sunglasses.
Mm.
Do you suggest sunglasses when possible when outside?"
No, try not to wear sunglasses. Now, interestingly enough, you mentioned earlier about like green eyes, having green eyes.
Yeah.
Green eyes actually predisposes you to being more sensitive to sunlight. But even with that, it's important to actually not wear sunglasses if you can.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and even there are different things you can do. If you have sensitivity to light, there's other problems going on. So if you can't like be outside because it causes a migraine or your eyes become like dry or whatever, that is a sign of some imbalances. For example, we see
Mhm.
that with copper and zinc imbalances. We see
Oh,
that
okay.
with something called cryptopyrrole disorder, which is a dual B6 and zinc deficiency. We see that with lymphatic congestion, which can be anything from
Interesting.
toxicity or iodine deficiency. So it's a sign that there's a problem. If you can train your eyes to be okay. Now I will wear sunglasses, but
Mhm.
very infrequently, or I try and take them off if we're going for a walk and stuff. So I will
Yeah.
definitely wear them, but if you can do it without the sunglasses, that'd be great.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I've been trying to go out and get morning sun.
Yeah.
Can you explain why that's good?
Well, morning sun doesn't quite have the intensity, so the rays don't actually the UV rays don't actually um, permeate for like the risk of burn is a lot less. Number one,
Mhm.
number two, just the light itself. So think
Mhm.
about light, just the word light. Now think from scripture, think from just
Mhm.
everything you know about light.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's so good for us. Our
Yeah.
melanocytes, our immune cells all get activated. It triggers a mechanism where your vitamin D starts to actually get mobilized through the liver system. So light brings life. So when
And
you
does
get
it
up in the
help with
morning,
your circadian rhythm too?
yeah, it
Like
helps you wake up. It
okay.
helps, yeah, exactly, and vitamin D it helps you actually remove any excess melatonin. So the
Mm.
deadhead from like a deep sleep where you're
Okay.
actually making the melatonin. it actually helps with that removal system, so you can
Mm,
get moving, and it helps with the lymph system. So,
okay.
especially just having a nice little refreshing glass of water and some sunlight first thing in the morning, one of the best things you can do.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, since we're on kind of the woo-woo topics, let me ask you about grounding.
Yeah,
Um, so I've people go to the beach, they take their shoes off.
yeah,
For some people, that's the only time they're ever barefoot.
yeah,
But they say that walking barefoot, putting your feet in the grass or on the sand or on the dirt, has a lot of benefits. They call it earthing, they
yeah.
call it grounding. What is that and how does it work?
So there's a great book that actually describes this. It's called the Invisible Rainbow: The History of Electricity. And so the essential component is all of our cells. They've got an electrostatic component to it. So they have sodium potassium gated channels. So um, we're basically electric beings. Our nervous system, when it fires, it's light. You can actually see it's light.
Mhm,
So we have all this electric circuitry within us.
mhm.
So how do we get charged? Guess where it comes from? The earth and the sun.
Okay.
So they actually, in this book, they have a diagram of ions and
Mhm,
how the sun heats the atmosphere and how the earth emits these ions. So we're getting these ions, or these negative charged particles, coming up and into us, and that helps our circuitry improve. So the way I've been saying it is, since COVID in particular, it's kind of like your body is a hotel and all your cells are like individual rooms,
mhm.
and the key card is not working. So
Mm.
people can't get into their room. So you have to go back and recharge it at the front desk. Earthing is like recharging,
Okay. Okay.
so you can get,
Yeah.
and it'll open up the cells
So,
because the electric current can work better.
if it's cold, what do you do?
So you can't, obviously, if it's cold. So they do have earthing mats. They have grounding sheets, so you can do
Mhm.
that. So
That's not, like, weird? Like,
no, no,
that's
it
not like a
actually, all they're
scam?
doing is they're actually plugging it into the ground outside, even though it's frozen.
Okay, okay.
So, and then that comes through your circuitry and then into the mat itself.
Okay, okay, so
Also, I highly
mhm,
recommend um, getting to places and locations, travel and everything, just going barefoot as much as you can
mhm,
in these different locations. I'm a huge fan of heading south for the winter if you're up north, and
mhm.
at least for a little bit, and making sure you're going barefoot as much as possible.
Yeah, 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 that makes sense. So, yeah, I try to go out and, walk around in the grass in the morning. Like this morning I did, it was like 40 some degrees, but, but it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been trying to do that, and if you're listening now, let us know if anybody does that, if you've been doing that, if you're let us know if you've been grounding by walking on the earth without shoes on. They say also, like, even if you just sit on a towel, as long as it's not something that has a insulation or like a backing, if it's just a regular towel, you can still get the benefits, right? Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, tell us. I wanna hear from listeners. Do you do that? Or do you use grounding pads or grounding mats or grounding sheets, and what has your experience been? And the other question I would ask is, how do you quantify the benefits? Is there a way to do that?
That's the hardest part. That's why there's so much blowback. There are scientific studies.
Mhm,
This the book I referenced, The Invisible
mhm,
Rainbow. He's a medical doctor who's gone through a lot of how the frequencies, the EMF, all of these different things, they
mhm,
block that. So what's interesting is our different networks, our phone networks, the 4G, 5G, all those things, even the cement that we walk on, all have the ability to cause challenges and disrupt that
mhm,
pattern. So I do feel like eventually, let's fast forward in the future quite a bit, we are going to have things that we build that allow for that transmission from the earth through whatever we're walking on. So it's not going to be like cement. It's actually going to
mhm.
allow that transmission, because this is why people go to a forest or even to a deep cave
Mhm.
system and just feel like
Yeah.
the reserves are being built back up. And
Yeah.
so we're like
Yeah.
batteries, we're just depleted.
Yeah.
Most of us are running on low for our batteries.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I go camping, I have a little secret spot that I go where I like to get away. It's kind of one of my recharging spots. There's a lot of moss, and I really like walking on the moss
Yeah.
and barefoot, walking on the moss or just sitting down on the moss. It's the best feeling, you know? It's pretty it's so different
Well, it's
because we
cushy too, plus it has,
yeah.
antioxidants that's,
Yeah.
giving you.
So we don't have that at my house, but there's a lot of moss up at the forest where I go, and so that's pretty cool. Sylvia is asking if we have a recommendation for a good grounding mat. Sylvia, we might have that in my wellness store. I'm gonna post a link here to our wellness store, on the Mary Grace Media channel. Um, but if we don't, I'll see if we can add one, but also Dr. Troy might have a recommendation as well here. So my wellness store is marygracewellness.gethealthy.com. I'm gonna put the link up here for that as well so you can see. Uh, and as always, you can go to my website to find links to my all of my sponsors, but that's it right there. Mary Grace. It's marygracewellness.gethealthy.store. And we do have a little discount for first time buyers. And if if you're buying supplements, um, and you're not really sure of the quality, especially if you're buying from big box stores, go to my wellness store and look. There's a good chance that the brands that you want, the vetted or, the higher quality brands, we have a lot in the wellness store. And if you don't see it, send me an email and I can probably add it. It's info@marygracemedia.com. Okay. Um, and then also what my website right there, marygracemedia.com. That's the website. We do have a lot of links there, including a link to Dr. Troy's office where you can schedule a free discovery call. And so if you forget everything else we talked about tonight and you want to know, how do I get in touch with this guy? You can go to my website, marygracemedia.com, and then go to the shopping tab. And there is a link right there where you can go to Synapse. Or you can also just scan the code here and go to Synapse, officialsynapse.com. Just make sure you tell them Mary Grace sent you. Um, okay.
I do have a website if they can't find it on yours.
Okay.
Ultimatelongevity.com.
Okay.
Kind of they're the ones who really brought this to fruition and do a good job. So they have a good
Okay, good.
products.
Ultimatelongevity.com.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's interesting when people are talking about, how they always used to go barefoot. And I remember as a child, um, I was talking to somebody about this, our generation, like, we were free range kids.
Hmm.
And so from the minute it was warm enough to take your shoes off, that's what we did. And then the other thing I would do is I would practice running on gravel as soon as springtime hit. I did,
Yep.
because I would wanna toughen up my feet, and then everywhere I went, like, all s I n I don't remember putting shoes on
Yeah.
except to go to, like, Sunday school, and then and then I ran everywhere. I was like one of those little like, the little
Yep.
bush people, just run, 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 run. I remember that, and we were all I mean, miles a day, right? Nobody was counting steps, you're just off you go,
Yeah.
and
And
nobody had a water bottle. Can you explain that? How did Gen X survive without the emotional support water bottle?
well, I think we had like clean air and oxygen, so so we did quite well with that.
I know it's a tangent, but I mean, seriously, like, think about that. We used to get in the car and
Oh
go to the beach. We would drive 3 hours to the beach for the day. I guess the adults did bring a cooler, but it was like there was no water bottles
yeah.
and nobody had a snack. There was no there was no cup holders in the cars,
Yeah.
no convenience stores, no Slurpees, nothing, no Capri Sun,
Yeah.
and you would go all day.
Yeah.
And then at some point, somebody would open one of those styrofoam coolers, and you would have, like, a bologna sandwich,
Right.
and then that was it, you're done for the
Yeah.
day. How did we go from that to perpetual consuming?
One step at a time. Little drip here, little drip there, slowly over the years. And so, um, as we polluted our food and our water source, it became an opportunity to then sell water, and then the idea of how to take care of uh, our kids and our family. I mean, that if you really cared about your kids, you're going to slap sunscreen all over them. You're going to
Mhm,
make all these new things, and so it really is out of balance in an excessive way. It's almost like when you support an excess, it becomes enabling. We've done that for
mhm.
decades when it comes to uh, just our how we live, and because of that, we're much more unhealthy. So
Yeah, yeah, the
my
more we
younger patients
consume.
and my kids don't like when we discuss that because they're like, "Yeah, that's great. That's not our world though that we're in right now." So, my grandparents used to say stuff about things that were happening in their day, and
Yeah.
they came out of the Great Depression, and they still talked about how they just yearned for those simpler times.
I mean,
Isn't that something?
I kind of find myself sometimes doing that, and, I mean, like, you think about just the amount of consumption, and I used to be a teacher. Some people know that, some don't, but I had a mentor, a kindergarten teacher mentor, and one of the things she used to tell parents, especially parents of the oldest or only child, when they were having trouble transitioning to being a little more independent in kindergarten and things like that, she would say, "What your child needs is a little more neglect." Because typically they were helicopter parents,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yep,
"Eat this, take that,"
yep,
and it's just, but then again, like, our generation, we just like, we were like the evil Knievel generation. I mean,
yeah,
literally, like, out the door, gone all day, doing God knows what. I mean, we used to play in construction sites,
yeah.
you
Well,
know?
yeah, we learned how to swim because our father threw us in the water, in the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different versus taking the swim classes and the other stuff, so
Yeah, it's just so I don't know. I mean, it is interesting to see the correlation of that mindset, that sort of hovering, helicoptering, and then the corresponding lack of health, even mental health, right?
well, I think we're actually so to your point earlier, we're
Mhm.
getting to a place where a new healthcare system model is gonna be looked at, and a lot of that is going to be a focus on how do I prevent disease. For example, I'll use
Yeah,
Tylenol. So many parents give their children Tylenol when they have a
yeah.
99 or a 100 fever. It's the worst thing you can do for their immune system.
Mhm.
You have to let their immune system react to
Yeah,
the infection so it
yeah.
learns how to take care of it in the future. And so just getting those guidelines and that education out, we've gotten to the point
Mhm.
where parents don't want their kids to suffer at all. So they're preemptively trying to stop the suffering and inducing much more serious conditions in
Yeah,
the process by
yeah.
ignoring our innate way that our
Mhm.
body was designed. Again, if God made it, it's good. If man tries to change or alter it, beware because we tend to not get it right.
Interesting. You were frozen. We got you back. Okay. Well, okay, speaking of Tylenol, so my grandfather was a chemist. He was he was actually had a chemical plant. But when I remember when Tylenol came out, he said, "This is one of the over the counter." He said, "This is one of the worst decisions ever."
Yeah.
He said, "We are gonna see liver damage. We are gonna see, like, alcohol poisoning."
Yeah.
He named all of the things that were wrong with Tylenol, and I don't think there's one thing I think maybe people need to understand about that is that it mixes terribly with alcohol, and one of the ways that kids get into a lot of trouble with drinking is the mixture of Tylenol and alcohol.
Yeah.
That it can you explain I know we're just kind of all over the map today, but maybe this could help somebody because I think that people take a lot of Tylenol.
Yeah, it is not good for the liver system. Tylenol is actually the number one method for teenage suicide. So I really want people to hear that. Number one method. So overdose of Tylenol. And it is broken down in the liver system. And so alcohol, which is also broken down in the liver system, it overloads the liver. And so if your liver can't detoxify you, there are significant consequences. And the bile acids actually back up into the blood. You become extremely itchy. And so there's a lot of damage that it can occur. Now, thankfully, the liver is the most regenerative organ in the body, and you can overcome it. But what
Mhm,
I'm always shocked because what they used to say, especially Tylenol with pregnancy and stuff like that, they had all these guidelines that they revoked, and they've just kind of eased off on them. Not because research shows it's fine, it's okay. It's because they've just gotten more lax with it, and they're going to try and treat it with something else. And then you get into the old medication chasing scenario where you
mhm.
start with one med and now fast forward 6
Yeah,
years and you're on 8
yeah.
different meds or 16.
Right, and these over-the-counter pain medications, to me, it seems like a recipe for disaster because, I mean, I know people who are very active physically and they eat Advil like candy. I
Yeah,
mean, it has like a candy coating. They look like little Skittles,
yeah.
and, that can't be good. I
No.
mean, no?
No, no, not at all, and so there's a reason why you feel the way that you do, and I'm gonna say when it
Mhm,
comes to Advil, that's different than Tylenol, but, a lot of times the joint achiness and pain is usually coming from an inability to detoxify through the gut, so a gut problem or a vascular problem with the kidneys,
mhm,
and, a lot of times these things improve. That's why you see when people are doing the carnivore or, when they do something like iodine deficiency is one of the things that can set off a lot of the joint problems as well. So just getting salt in, and people actually underconsume salt quite a bit. So by getting
mhm,
proper salt in with good iodine can replace Advil in a lot of different scenarios. The carnivore diet can replace Advil. I've had people when we clean up their diet all of a sudden say, "I stopped my Advil," and because Advil will affect the stomach, it'll affect
mhm,
the kidneys as well. So a lot of challenges there.
mhm, mhm. Um, that's interesting, yeah, the carnivore diet. I've hear a lot of people talk about going off of, um, anti-inflammatory medications when they get on when they get on the carnivore diet, and I is some of it have does some of it have to do with the fat content as well?
Well, yeah, because we need fat for our
Mhm,
brain, we need it for our hormones,
mhm,
and omega-3 fatty acids are anti-inflammatory. So
mhm,
the fat content's really really important. You're starting to use fat for energy, but even more importantly, you're not using the excessive amount of sugar because we have too much sugar.
yeah,
Period.
mhm,
And so, especially in the last 115 years, in 1905, the average American consumed 5 to 10 pounds of sugar a year. Fast
yeah,
forward to the early 2000s, and the average American is consuming 160 pounds of sugar a year. So from 5 pounds to 160 pounds.
wow.
That's a significant difference in just 100 years.
Yeah, that's crazy, and
Yeah.
also when you say fat, you're actually talking about animal fat
Yeah.
or really pure fat from a fruit like an olive or an
Or butter.
avocado,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, but
Byproducts of,
yeah, not highly processed
no.
industrial waste
Yeah.
known as canola oil or corn
Yeah.
oil or things like that, that what are referred to as seed oils, that
Yeah,
kinda thing.
exactly. Yeah, when you
Yeah,
go to a restaurant, ask if they have real butter. If they say, "Yeah, yeah, we got margarine," then you know you're in the wrong restaurant. Get out of there.
yeah. In France, they don't allow margarine to be
No.
anywhere near butter in the store on the
Yeah.
shelf. Like, it's by law, you can't put margarine on the shelf where the butter is,
Yeah.
which I think is a beautiful thing because they
Yeah,
have
it should
so
be back in the automotive section where the other, plastics are.
it's crazy. I wanna ask you about blood pressure. I know that we've talked about this, but it seems to come up a lot, and I heard recently a report about just a description about the changing guidelines around blood pressure over the years, and it seems like that now, um, the doctors are sort of chasing this perfect blood pressure, and we encountered this a lot with my dad after the stroke. They would be satisfied with nothing, except a 120 over 80 or 110 over 70. Like, if he was high, if his blood pressure was high when they took it, um, they almost always wanted to jump in and medicate him, and it was a constant back and forth, and here's where the advocacy comes in. It was like a broken record. We were like, "Well, hey, could you give him a few minutes and let him rest because he just finished his bath, and he's probably more likely to have a high blood pressure, or he just ate,
Yeah,
or he just had his physical therapy, or you guys just came in and poked and prodded him for 15 minutes and
yeah,
gave him an IV. How about let's check it again in 15 or 20 minutes?" And it was just, like, constant. And
yeah,
if we hadn't been there, they would have had him over-medicated.
yeah,
As it is, he came home from the hospital with, I think, 3 or 4 different blood pressure medications. Now he's down to 1 every other day, plus other
yeah.
nutraceuticals.
Yeah,
How is
you
that?
you
How
well, you
why
you you hit the nail on the head. That's, we induce a lot of the challenges, and here's the problem: when you are making medical decisions based off of, a linear mindset, you're going to miss
Mhm,
the actual, big picture, and so,
mhm.
truthfully, we're a dynamic system. We're not
Yeah,
a static system at all, and so we call it probabilities of sum of potential. What that means is there are different variables that get into it that can influence the blood pressure. You named a bunch of them. So you kind of go through
yeah,
that mental checklist and then say, well, we'll check it again in 15 minutes to make sure we get an accurate response. Because the problem
mhm.
is you get put on a blood pressure medication and now the blood pressure drops too low. They're not getting oxygen to their brain. They fall, they faint, all the other
Yeah.
things start to happen.
You hear
So
about
we
this all
see
the
that
time.
all the
Yeah,
time.
and
Yeah.
and I have a friend, like, she's on, she was telling me about the blood pressure medication she's on, and her blood pressure is something like 110 over 70
Yeah.
on this medication, and but, when she goes to the doctor, her blood pressure is sky high,
Yeah.
and and so I think she has white coat syndrome, but the other thing too that happens, last time I took my dad to the VA, they put the automatic cuff on him, and, his feet barely reached the floor, and I don't think they had it on right. I think the little tube was in the wrong place.
Yeah.
It wasn't over right here,
The
it was
brachial.
kind of around. So, anyway, his blood pressure was something like 200 and something over 100 and something, and I was like, "You're gonna need to do a manual blood pressure on
Yeah.
him." Like, I said, "This isn't even it's not even close." I take his blood pressure every morning, and this no.
Yeah.
So but again, it's like, it's the whole advocacy thing.
Yeah.
If you don't have somebody there to tell you, he could have left that office with a whole new cocktail of blood pressure pills.
Well, here I'm going to point out one other one because this is another mistake that traditional doctors make is they only take the blood pressure on one arm, not both. It's important to take it on
Oh,
both arms. Let me explain why.
okay.
One of the causes of high blood pressure is when your brain, like white coat syndrome, sends a signal and you have a nervous system reaction, and your brain, your nerves tell the blood vessels to contract. Sometimes people have what's called hemisphericity, meaning a dominant brain. One side of the brain is working more efficiently or is more active than the other side. So if that happens for too long a period, you can actually have different blood pressures from left to right because the nerves are firing at different rates. So one side is firing faster,
Interesting.
the other side's
Wow.
firing slower.
Yeah.
So if you have a blood pressure differential of greater than 10 from one side to the other, and they happen to measure the high one, guess what they're doing? By giving you a blood pressure medication, it decreases them on both sides, and now you've got
Mhm.
one side that's dropping too low, and you're going to have left brain lack of oxygen issues, forgetting people's names and forgetfulness in certain areas, or your digestive system becomes compromised because it controls that more. So people will be shocked. When I was doing rounds at the hospital, I asked them to do that on a particular patient, because I suspected they had this imbalance. He was on two different medications plus an acid blocker. And so I had them do it, and it came back 22 points different. I said, you're basically, he's bonking. You're basically have him on too much blood pressure medication, and he's not getting enough oxygen, and that's why you're seeing the heart arrhythmia. And so you get him off the blood pressure medication, heart starts to improve, but then you got to figure out why the one side's still a little bit higher. And there's usually something physical going on with that, or there's an imbalance. But
Mhm.
that's a neurologic thing, not an actual blood pressure thing.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, the top number and the bottom number, what do they mean?
So diastolic and systolic. So
Mhm.
basically, it's how it contracts and then how it rebounds.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
so it's measuring its reaction to the cuff squeezing on the arteries.
Okay.
So we want to know how stiff are your arteries, and we
Mhm.
want to know the arterial lining. Those are the biggest
Mhm.
components. So stiff arteries don't react as quickly, so the number will go up higher.
Interesting. And so, like, for older people, they tend to have stiffer arteries anyway,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And that means that a slightly higher blood pressure is actually more beneficial,
Yeah, it's like
warranted,
having a
right?
garden. Well, not necessarily.
Or
So if their blood pressure is higher because the demand is there and the arteries themselves are actually not stiff, that's a good sign. You don't
Mhm.
touch it. So we see this with people who are athletes, but their heart's pushing hard against to move the lymph and things like
Mhm.
that.
Okay. Okay.
But if their arteries are stiff, like a garden hose that's like hardened,
Mhm.
and it's stiff because calcium is being deposited in there, which that happens from damage to the inside of the artery lining,
Mhm.
small local infections, and then the cholesterol comes and plaques over it, or calcium can build up. When you start to see a stiffening or a lack of omega-3 fatty acids,
Mhm.
the arteries can get harder. Then that's not as good. You want to make
Mm.
sure the arteries are still flexible. So, for example,
Okay.
if you just do deep breathing and your high blood pressure goes down with deep breathing, heart rate will
Mhm.
go down with deep breathing, but blood pressure, if it's a truly stiffened, hardened artery, shouldn't be impacted that much if there's a real problem.
Interesting.
So if it
Okay.
does, you've just helped reset a lot of that.
Wow. Okay. Um, we need to take a little break. And, I okay. I got it. Hold on. My beef fell down because the cat knocked it down. You guys missed it. Everybody missed it earlier when we were getting ready for the show. My cat Billy was here, and, he was looking for food. Um, and he knocked the beef down. He knocked down the beef, which is right here. Grid down, chow down. Speaking of food, um, we this is the portion of the show where we talk to you about our sponsors. Before we talk about the beef though, let's talk about Synapse and how people can benefit from contacting you and your team and scheduling a consultation, what you offer there. And I'm going to put the link up here too. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so we're treating people from all over the country in 12 different
Mhm.
countries right now, and we're being asked to onboard our philosophy for a new healthcare model across the country.
Mhm.
Pretty exciting times, and we're very much about proactive. So
Mhm.
we work on assessing dysfunction, mental, chemical, or physical dysfunction is what we're looking for. If there's a breakdown in communication, that leads to dysfunction. Dysfunction leads to disease. So if you can measure the proper communication and correct
Mhm.
it early, then you can prevent disease. So we've seen changes with everything from Alzheimer's. We have reversals of Alzheimer's to cardiovascular disease and intestinal repair. A lot of inflammation, a lot of autoimmune since COVID and the spike
Mhm.
protein injuries that we're seeing there.
Mhm.
So we focus on a lot of the foundational stuff, how God designed us, good sleep, uh,
Mhm.
getting good, clean food in your diet. We actually have books that we get to our patients that we've written that we're going to have to change after RFK does his thing. So, which we're
Mhm.
okay with. We're good with
Well,
that.
and the thing that you guys do
Mhm.
too, and anybody who wants to, you can scan the code or you can go to officialsynapse.com and you can schedule a free discovery call. The thing about Dr. Troy and his team, it's so different, is that you you're getting a deep assessment of where you are to get a baseline. For example, when you do your intake, you go through a very extensive questionnaire, and that helps them develop a roadmap, not only of where you are, but also of what types of testing they want you to do, what types of blood testing and things like that. And that's it's pretty cool. I've been going through the process because I have an autoimmune condition. And the thing that I like about the process that they use too is that when you get your results and you get you go through the what do you call it? The report of findings, I guess.
Findings. Yep.
You guys have, I call it like a layering process where you don't throw the whole kitchen sink at the patient at one time and say, "Okay, we're gonna fix this," 'cause it'd be overwhelming.
Yep.
And so you have sort of a priority tree where you say, "We're gonna tackle this and this right now. And we're going to, we may see some results in this other area in the process, but these are the top priorities that we're going to
Yep.
focus on right now." And sometimes I think it's a matter of dealing with some of the symptoms so that you can get through the layers to where the cause is. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah. We'll prioritize some of the foundational stuff like digestion and sleep and get those systems working. So then other things downstream will clear up. So you
Mhm.
don't have to address everything that's found. So
Yeah. Yeah.
but it works really well to do that when you restore how your system is supposed to be
Mhm.
working.
Mhm. Um, and so everybody go to officialsynapse.com, schedule the, discovery call, and then also I wanted to let people know about a couple of other things that we have. We have a new sponsor on the show, and
Hey,
I'm excited about this, because a lot of people have been wondering a lot about what's gonna happen to their money.
yeah,
And we've been, people ask me, and I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not even trying to give financial advice, but I have a good resource for people who want some education about gold IRAs.
hmm,
And so you can go now and you can get a free gold IRA guide. Go to the link there on the screen. Get the free IRA guide. It's all. I'm going to also put the link in the chat and in the show notes. It's a guide, and the thing that I like about it is that it's just educating you. And if you want to take it a step further and sign up for a webinar, you can do that. But it's all about education, helping you understand how it all works. What happens when you roll some of your IRA into gold, when we're talking like physical gold that's kept in a vault. But
yeah.
the guide explains all that. If you do the webinar, it explains all that. And we're working with Augusta Gold right now. And I really like them because they have a really strong educational component and there's no pressure. And that's why I decided to work with them. So go to the link there and get the guide and start with that, and then you can make a decision about what you wanna do for your family. Now I wanna talk about beef because, I mean, who doesn't? So,
Golden beef.
we gold and beef, that's it, that's all you need, and guns and ammo.
Yeah, right.
Um, and your health. You got that, you're good, like, you're golden. But this beef, guys, people talk a lot about a couple things. One is farmland, the other one is, um, the what's in the beef. And then the other thing people talk about is what happens if the grid goes down. If you have a freezer full of food and the grid goes down, there's a chance you could lose that food. So our friends over at Grid Down Chow Down, they did something about it. They started dehydrating beef, and now you can actually sign up for a subscription to get this beef sent to you every month. And if you do the 24 serving subscription using the promo code Mary Grace, they will give you 4 free servings. This right here is a pound of ground beef. I mean, it's kind of cool because all you have to do is add water and you can cook anything that you would cook with the fresh ground beef. That's pretty exciting. Some people are using it for everyday cooking. Some people are using it to stockpile the way that you would when you stick a bunch of stuff in the freezer. It's really up to you. When you go there, use promo code Mary Grace. We're going to play their commercial because I love it and I love this little farmer. So we're going to watch him and then we'll be back.
Hello, I'm Jordan, and this is my brother. And I'm Nace, and we're at the Grid Down Chow Down. And this is Larry, who is a local rancher that we've partnered with. Now, Larry, you've been ranching for over 4 generations, is that correct?
That's correct. I'm 3rd generation, my son's 4th generation, and I've got some grandkids that are 5th generation.
Man, that's
We've
awesome.
been here for quite a while, yeah.
All right, now, Larry, your cattle is grass-fed, grass-finished, and pasture-raised, just like God intended them to be.
Yes, because I want to know what's in that animal.
Right.
What it's been fed. And so the only way to do that is for us to keep it all natural, just like God has done it for years and years and years, thousands of years.
How has partnering up with us helped you and your ranch?
Well, it's allowed us to develop a market that we didn't have before, one that can get directly to the consumer, and that's great.
And just remember, more importantly, with every package that you buy, we put a salvation track in there. So from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you for allowing us to do what we believe that God has us here to do. And just remember, God loves you. He really does.
Amen.
Go to griddownchowdown.com. I love that. And every time you buy from them, you're helping to save American farmland. And in case you're wondering about the purity of this product, I'm going to read the ingredients. Ground beef. That's it. 100% grass-fed and grass-finished, grown and processed in the US. There you go. All right. It's and the guys are great. They're so good. We love them. And they've got some new products coming out soon, and we'll talk about that soon too. They're gonna have pre-made ground beef patties for the people who truly want everything done for them. And fajita strips, fajita steak. Again, for the people who want it all done for them. Add liquid, boom, you got fajitas. Cook it. Unless you're into, like, tartare. But yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. We love these guys. How long does the freeze-dried beef last? That's a good question. Uh, they conservatively 15 years. I mean, if you wanna keep it that long, you can. I like to cycle my, disaster foods, I like to kind of, uh, rotate the supply and eat what's in the front first. Like, you definitely there's some things you have to do that with, water, things like that, but this, you literally can chuck it in a metal one of those metal bins and put it in there, as long as you keep this package sealed. This is a special, like, Mylar package. As long as that's sealed and there's no moisture getting in here, you're good to go. So but when you open it, you get a scripture little card. So it's like Cracker Jacks. You have to decide. Are you gonna store it or are you gonna open it and look at your prize? Okay. Um, it's up to you. Okay. We are actually an hour in to this conversation goes so fast. You wanna jump into some questions?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's see. We have, we don't have a lot of people on Rumble right now for some reason. I don't know why, but so we don't have any questions over there, but we do have some questions on the YouTube. We got a lot of people on YouTube tonight. Um, we have Ryan who wants to know, can you explain how Accutane affects the liver? Kind of out of nowhere.
Oh yeah, no, Accutane can be hard on the liver. The liver enzymes will go up. So like a lot of medications, the liver metabolizes it, so it has to break it down. So when you use a
Mhm.
medication, it's going to be used to actually work on clearing up your skin, but it has to be escorted out through the body, through the liver.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy thing to actually get out of your system. So there's basically the liver enzymes can start to go up, and by itself, the research doesn't. It's pretty rare to have like severe liver damage, but
Mhm.
again, the problem is we have a bioaccumulation scenario.
Yeah.
You're taking multiple things, being exposed to multiple things, then the liver becomes harder and harder to detoxify everything.
Mhm.
So it's one of many things. So just have to watch the liver enzymes. I myself, if Accutane works for you but causes headaches, it's too much for the liver system, because by the time your liver enzymes go up, there's already been damage to the liver scenario. So you can see a lot of lymph problems and other things.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't like how they feel on it. They love the clear skin if it works. But again,
Mhm.
I'm just going to say, if you look into the research on high dose iodine, a lot of times the skin will clear up with high dose iodine. So there are natural things that we use and can use, and because of these deficiencies that we end up having the breakouts. Because
Mhm.
even look at adult onset acne right now, that was not a thing in my grandparents' time. And even when I was a kid, it was rare for adults to have acne. It's only when we started onboarding certain medications and childhood medications that we
Mm.
started seeing a lot of this. Also, in the 1950s and 70s, we pulled iodine out of our food supply. We had actually put it into bread,
Yeah.
and they replaced it with bromide, which actually
Yeah.
is toxic to us in high doses, and it actually displaces iodine. Iodine is crucial for thyroid, and iodine is crucial for prevention of
Mhm.
infections inside the body. It helps set a pH in the body. So if you want to change your skin, you need to change the pH, sorry, of the skin.
Mhm.
Anyone who has cysts around the body, so especially cystic acne, it's an iodine deficiency.
Interesting.
Number one
Well,
deficiency worldwide.
and the iodine piece or the bromide piece too, has an impact on people with thyroid problems,
Yeah,
right? Um, so for example, me, I have Hashimoto's. One of the worst things that I can do is eat wheat, American,
yeah,
especially because of the bromide, because it
yeah,
binds to my thyroid, right? And it
yeah.
displaces my thyroid hormone.
Well, if you look at the periodic table, remember
Mhm.
that back in science class? So you've got iodine, you've got bromide, you've got fluoride, and you've got chloride. So all of those things are what we call halides. They can all displace each other. So when they
Mhm.
put fluoride in the water, guess what it's doing? Displacing your iodine. The only place we can really get iodine is from the ocean or crops that are grown near the ocean. So
Mhm.
probably 90% of the United States, especially in middle America, is deficient in iodine.
Mhm.
Not because we're not consuming enough, but also we're being exposed to too many things that displace it.
Okay.
Bromide, fluoride, that's all big
Right.
part of it.
So and so anytime you see the words enriched flour, enriched wheat flour, even if it's organic, whole wheat, whatever, that means it has bromide. And
Yeah,
so it's
and
doing
toothpaste with fluoride. So think
yeah.
about the daily exposure most people are getting.
Yeah. And if you have fluoridated water also, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's crazy. So many things that are attacking our system. It's crazy.
Yes.
Okay, do you see any questions you want to address here? Somebody's asking about nicotine. Um, yeah, I think we talked about that maybe before, but obviously we need to revisit it.
Yeah, so the question is, please address your thoughts on nicotine as a nutrient. So this all has come about because of Dr. Artis. So I spoke with Brian at the last Reawaken tour. I listened to some of his science stuff. With my patients who are trying it, I didn't see a big difference, but he
Okay.
explained it a little bit more. So on paper, it makes sense. I've not seen enough myself
Mhm.
to be fully convinced, but he had some good data there, and it was pretty compelling. So that's one I'm kind of
Mhm.
observing, and
A
I'm going to do a wait and see on that one.
and we're talking about nicotine in the as pure a form as you can get it,
Yeah,
not in a cigarette with
correct.
all of the addictive substances and the tar
Yeah,
and the other things that can harm you or the snuff,
yeah, exactly.
chewing
Well,
tobacco, things like that.
we have nicotinic receptors in our body,
Mhm.
so they do exist, but you can also get more natural sources through your probiotics and your bacteria and the B vitamins that are produced to support that, because
Okay.
that existed long before we had nicotine patches or smoking. We
Mhm.
still had nicotinic receptors. So I do know, like, Native Americans and other cultures had they learned to smoke plants pretty early on,
Mhm.
but we had those receptors inside our body, inside our brain, already. So there are certain natural things
Okay.
that can actually promote
Okay.
that I think are just
Interesting.
focus on those things a little bit
Right. Right. Interesting. Um, I think, we don't have a ton of questions tonight, and that's okay. Um, we were a little bit late getting started, so I think it's we can just call it a night maybe and have a
more. There was one
shorter.
other question I saw I
Oh,
wanted
you
to
had
ask.
another one? Okay.
Yeah, and so,
I missed it.
with the carnivore diet, is it okay to sneak in
Oh, I
fruits and
saw that.
veggies?
Yeah.
So this is my 2 cents on that. When you sneak in fruits and veggies, it does help your mind to get some other tastes in there, so there's a benefit that way. It could help or curtail your actual results depending where
Mhm.
you're at. So if you're doing it for weight loss and you're at the weight that you wanna be, there are many people who do like a ketovore. So it's kind of
Mhm.
a combination, but keep in mind, you just got to pay attention to how you feel. Does it have a net negative effect or a positive? Some people will all of a sudden have loose bowels, and it completely disrupts their system. Well, then it's probably not the best thing for you. Other people, they actually feel really good with that, um,
Mhm.
and it helps their bowels. It helps their brain. So I just tell people, just pay attention to how you feel. If it plateaus you,
Mhm.
then you know that it wasn't the best thing. But it can also, I think it's actually good. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's good to cheat a little bit on
Mhm.
certain diets sometimes. Does that make sense?
Maybe once you've reached a point because I think it's worth reminding people that one of the benefits of the carnivore diet is that it's an elimination diet.
Yeah,
And you're paring down, especially if you are focusing on beef.
yeah,
So, like, if you go, really extreme, beef, salt, water, maybe eggs, um, then you're getting a really good idea. Oh, and fat and animal fat, right?
yeah,
You're getting a really good idea of your body's, like, baseline,
yeah,
especially if you do it for 90 days. Then, if you start reintroducing things like, some people can't tolerate even dairy on carnivore, especially if they're trying to lose weight. That can be a problem. Um, but then when you start to reintroduce things, it would be, it would be wise, in my opinion, to reintroduce one thing at a time if you're dealing with a lot of sickness.
yeah,
And a lot of people who go on carnivore are dealing with a lot of sickness. Again, if you're basically fine and you just wanna lose weight because you eat like crap and you go on carnivore, you probably are gonna have a different experience from somebody who has a lot of autoimmune and tons of comorbidities and, obesity and high blood pressure and, uh, pre-diabetes. Like, that's a whole different story from somebody who's just going, "I wanna lose 30 pounds."
yeah.
but everything else is fine. My joints feel fine. I just want to not be fat. Those are those are different people. Um, so I think that that question should have a little more qualifier to it. And that leads me to tell you that on Friday, we are going to have a show with the carnivore doctor, Dr. Sean Baker. So come
Great
back to
question
this
for yes.
channel and we will ask him that question and get his opinion. And that's going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Mary Grace Show, on all of the networks, on all of the channels that I broadcast to. And if you're not getting the notifications, please go and get on my email list, marygracemedia.com, so that you will know when we go live. But that's gonna be this Friday with Dr. Sean Baker, the carnivore doctor. So good question. It'll be interesting to see the comparison too of because he's not like ultra orthodox, you have to be carnivore or else.
Right.
He is a big advocate for, getting off of ultra processed foods first and foremost. Um, and so it's interesting. Okay, now the questions are coming in hard and fast. Let's do two
Usually
more.
okay.
It always happens. Let's do two more and then maybe the alpha gal one, because that seems to come up a lot.
Okay. Well, let me answer the one above that. So, would you recommend bone broth for a detox diet? Yes, that's a quick, easy one. So, good organic bone broth can be very good, especially up north in the winter months. It's very, very good. I love having a cup of
Mm.
bone broth. So, excellent in the winter months. This one, tuning in a little late, but wondering if you have discussed anything regarding alpha gal. This would be a good question for next week too, for you guys. But generally speaking,
Mhm.
so for alpha gal, that's where people have developed antibodies and don't necessarily tolerate the meat and have challenges with it. This is my 2 cents. We treat that like Lyme disease, and so you want to actually treat the immune system reaction. So some people will have a negative response to it. You have to treat it like you would any other autoimmune or immune challenge.
Mhm.
So you have to balance that out. I will use things to again affect the environment. So I'll use things like ACE mannan, immune system support, improve the intracellular mechanisms, and downregulate some of the um, immune system overreaction. And sometimes that requires killing off the infection first. So the only problem is it comes from a tick bite, and so it can drive it into cyst form. So it's way harder to manage, but it can be done. So it's a lot of changing things up because you have to pay attention to your body. So going after the actual infection and then balancing the
Mhm.
immune system response. And we will do things like ACE mannan and iodine to create a different environment to help kick the cyst form of the actual infections out. And then once you clear that infection, it can take months, but then you can actually reduce the antibodies. So we have to sometimes pull people off of a carnivore or protein diet for 6 months and then get them back on it again.
Mhm. But you have been able to reverse this in
Yeah,
people?
I don't run into it a lot, to be honest. So
Mhm.
I've had two patients. I have one out of Texas that top of my head I can
Mhm.
recall,
Mhm.
and it took us 2 years, but we got her, and she had a lot of other stuff that
Mhm.
goes with that too, fructose
Yeah.
intolerance as well. So she couldn't do sugar, red meats, and fructose. So it was
Wow.
a very hard scenario.
I know somebody who has alpha-gal and has had it for quite
Yeah.
some time. Yeah. I'm gonna send her this. Okay, so, somebody just asked how often we go live here. We go live several times a week here on the Mary Grace Show. We don't have a set schedule yet. Uh, we will be live a few more times this week. We have Sam the Spy coming on Thursday. Everybody loves him, especially with all this legal stuff that's
Yes.
happening. So you will wanna tune in for that. It's Tuesday afternoon, but honestly, just go to my website, marygracemedia.com, get on the mailing list, and that will help you, to get the notification in your inbox. You can also go to my Substack It is realmarygrace.substack.com. I send out a Substack post, and that has the links. That's the other thing. I put the links so you can just link directly to the show without having to go search. And if you search on places like Facebook, sometimes you might not find me. Imagine that. Uh, so, but that's where you find me. And speaking of social media, my accounts on social media are verified. And if you ever run across a message or a comment or a page or an account that is saying that it's Mary Grace Media or the Mary Grace Show and it doesn't have the verified badge, you're in the wrong place and you should report it. All of my accounts are verified, with the exception of Telegram, but I'm hardly ever on there. So if anybody's writing to you on Telegram saying that they're Mary Grace, it's not. Just
Yeah.
it's not me. And I'm not ever going to be trying to sell you crypto or some kind of investment scheme or anything like that. I'm not doing it. Okay. So Dr. Troy, one more time, where can everybody find you? I'm going to put it up here. And how can they get in touch and schedule a consultation?
Yep, just go to official Synapse. A lot of information on the website as well. A lot of education, but there's a free discovery call, and we just see if there's a good fit. We treat people from all over the United States and 12 different countries. So we're
Fantastic.
really big on education. So I
Yes.
wanted to throw one last thing because David asked a question about eating fruits and vegetables. It's okay, David. You don't have to do carnivore. So you're doing a great job just giving up the sugar for Lent. Just keep going with what you're doing, David.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
No.
It's beneficial for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes the stress of trying to like think, like what do they call it? Orthorexic. Like you can get so stressed out
Yeah.
about what you're eating or not eating that it's worse. It has a net negative effect. So if you're that kind of person, especially if you're really obsessive, maybe just kind of like take it slow. So, and speaking of stress, as always, remember to go outside,
Yes.
look at the sky, breathe fresh air, touch some grass or sand or dirt, and even sit on the ground. And the other thing I want to add to that is for the sake of mobility, one of the best things you can do to keep yourself moving as you age is to get down on the floor and back up every day, at least once. And if you can only start by getting in a chair, do that. And then maybe put one knee on the floor and then get up. But work it to where you can get all the way down, lying on the floor, and get back up once a day. And if you start doing that before you lose the ability, then you'll never lose the ability. That's just
Love it.
my.
Yep, I love it.
It's a big one because people fall and
Absolutely.
then they can't get up. So, okay, that's it, I think. And yeah, awesome. Thank you again, Dr. Troy. This is the Mary Grace Show. This is Ask the Doctor with Dr. Troy Spurrill from officialsynapse.com. And we have been here tonight to bring you information about how to take control of your health and also how to get the resources to get to the root cause of disease and hopefully reverse that. Everybody have a good evening. We'll see you back here soon. Remember to follow marygracemedia.com and come back for more. Have a great night, everybody.
Take care.